Jeffrey Epstein's apparent suicide produced several questions this week, but perhaps none is more important than what remains to be done for the women that the wealthy investment banker is accused of abusing, now that they will not get their day in court. For them, local experts say the long road of the healing process is only just beginning.
Once people tell their story and break that silence, they may begin to realize how deeply their lives have been impacted by the trauma that they've endured. A lot of times people will try to live in some kind of denial or dissociation for a long period of time in order to just survive what they've been through. And when they do start to acknowledge that, it can be a very painful process.
The 66-year-old Epstein was awaiting trial on charges of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls. Law enforcement officials searched his New York mansion and a private island he owned in the Caribbean. Court documents claim Epstein's crimes may have spanned decades.
And what we find in therapy when we're talking to people, often decades after the crime has happened, is that many people try to talk about it in the very beginning. They might be very young, they might be a young child or a teen, and they try to tell someone in their world about it, perhaps a trusted family member, and that oftentimes the level of denial is so strong that they're told that they're not believed and not to lie about things like that. And so then victims hold that close to them for decades, thinking no one will believe me. I tried to tell someone, I tried to get help, and I wasn't heard, so no one will believe me.
While Epstein's case is certainly shocking and brings attention to sexual assault crimes, it's important to remember that victims of similar sexual violence live right here in our local community.
Across Bucks County, the greater Philadelphia area, and across our country, it is a very serious and pervasive problem, both the sexual abuse of children and the commercial sexual exploitation of children.
Well, I think, the misconception that a lot of people think is that human trafficking is done overseas, like the movie Taken, snatched off the street, and that's not what it is. It's domestic here, right in our backyards. A lot of people are still in denial that it is happening here. I've actually gotten into an argument with someone in the community saying it is not happening here. I said, ma'am, I work with these victims here, and I think they don't want to think it's happening here, but it is.
Here at the Network of Victims Assistance in Jameson, trained experts work closely with victims and law enforcement officials. They work not only to combat human trafficking, but also to help victims feel safe and able to come forward with their stories, in order to keep something like Epstein's alleged crimes from happening here.
A victim's not just going to come and be like, raise their hand going, hey, I'm a victim. These, victims are told and drilled in their head to keep silent. You are not going to talk to law enforcement. You're not going to tell anyone what's happening. You're not giving any information. But the more that you can put out of knowing what resources are there to help them, that's the best way that we can offer that help.
Even if Epstein had survived to face justice, experts say that closure is not something that's easy to come by in these types of cases.
We work with all victims who come to us in therapy about what can they do to heal, whether or not they ever get that recourse. Even if they do choose to go through a criminal justice process and the offender is alive and is able to be prosecuted, that does not mean that the victim will feel perhaps a sense of closure or even healing through that process. Healing is something that each victim has to determine for themselves what will feel like the most closure and the most healing that they can get. And typically that's a very individual, personal journey.
If you have concerns about sexual violence in your community, or if you're a victim yourself, you can contact Bucks County's Network of Victim Assistance 24 hours a day at their hotline at 1-800-675-6900 or online at novabucks.org. From Jameson, Pennsylvania, I'm Hayden Mittman, PBS 39 News Tonight.